Hey, how's it going? I'm gonna have this be my first ever video to record, so I'm interested to see how this goes. But I'm interested in a lot of things. I'm interested in a lot of different franchises and properties and things that exist in the zeitgeist of kind of everything. Everything that is created usually has multiple hands who go into the property to make it exist. And this goes for all types of things. When a property is made, usually it will be made in one form of media, and then it will branch out when others have different ideas to bring it to a different level. This goes for movies, shows, and so forth. A lot of movies end up becoming graphic novels or are based off of actual novels, and some, like video games, can sometimes get live action or animated different properties. And with all of this said, there is one franchise that has just a whole slew of different things that it's based on. From starting as just a tabletop game, it has now grown into so many different things. It has grown into video games, it has grown to graphic novels, it has grown into actual novels, and even now it is getting an actual live-action adaptation on Amazon. And I am of course talking about Warhammer 40k. Warhammer is a sci-fi franchise that takes place in the 41st millennia, and this is a world of constant war of different Xenos and Chaos and human factions that constantly go up against each other in constant combat in pursuit of survival or conquest. And this has explored many different styles of stories, from ones that inspire hope to some that show that there is no light at the end of the tunnel. Some different species are doomed to fail, some are on the brink of extinction, and some are wallowing in the failures of their previous generations and previous decisions. And with all of this, we have to take a step back, because there was a story that everyone proclaims as the best part of this franchise, and this being 30,000 during the Horus Heresy, which is where we are starting this series. And this series of which I refer to is the series that I wanted to name this video and for future videos in the coming year. The series I am referring to is this one, the Origins of Evil series, an idea that came to me in December of last year, and this was while watching the movie Nosferatu, where Ellen, the main character of this movie, has a predicament where she is being haunted by Count Orlok, and asks Willem Dafoe's character,
"Does evil come from within us, or from beyond?"
And the idea of this series is to explore that question in the darkest franchises that I know to exist. Yeah, a lot of these are revered, some of these have hit and misses within their gallery, but I think overall I wanted to see if we can go into multiple of these different franchises, explore the historical context of how they were created, their creators, and have all the different hands who have built the franchise into what it is today. And one of these is definitely going to be Warhammer 40k, and I wanted to, in this series, go through all the Horus Heresy books. There are 54, and I just finished number 1, Horus Rising. Horus Rising takes place when all the Primarchs, who are basically the Emperor's children, his chosen leaders of his legion of super soldier space marines. At this point in the story, the Emperor has gone back to Earth to focus on a secret project.
You didn't see anything, right?
And Horus has been made the War Master. As War Master, he is given a lot of different responsibilities, between being a diplomat, to being a warlord, to being a tactician, to being just someone who gives out advice to his brothers who are in need. And this has been putting a lot of pressure on his shoulders. But this is the start of how his decline from all of this responsibility falls, to him eventually turning his back on the Emperor and being a member of Chaos. The Horus Heresy is revered, and revered is kind of an understatement. It's kind of glazed. It's glazed in ways that is just...
It's maybe one of the greatest stories ever told. It's got it all. It's got a little something for everyone. A story of betrayal, violence, love, terrorism, action, drama, mystery.
And I think the Horus Heresy is just, it's very grand and very big, and it has just a bunch of the characters that everybody likes. It has all the Primarchs, which is the big dogs of every legion. If you're a fan of the Salamanders, you're most likely a fan of Vulcan. If you're a fan of the World Eaters, you are a fan of Angron. And the Horus Heresy is finally a time where not only did they all be around, and they're all alive, and on top of that, they're fighting each other. And very much it is a very biblical battle. A lot of people I've seen had arguments of like, how is this any similar to the Bible? It's like, this is clearly the war in heaven, which is like in Genesis, I believe, in the Bible. I know in Warhammer there is a war in heaven that does exist. I know it's between the Necrons of the Catan, but in this context, this is very similar to the Genesis version. Hell, some of the art is very similar between like biblical paintings of the angels fighting in comparison to the Primarchs fighting. I mean, look at that. Look at this image. You're gonna tell me this isn't biblically based? It is a very interesting time within the Warhammer time period. And I think overall there's a reason that people love it so much. And I wanted to see what it was all about, honestly, because I knew there was 54 books, and I've seen people say random quotes and random moments that I didn't understand. Like, fuck Erebus. I don't know who Erebus is. Spoiler alert, I do now, and fuck Erebus.
I can't stand looking at that thing. I can't. Vile. But there it is. Look at how smug that thing is, too.
Going into this, I was kind of expecting the same approach I was going to have in going to any franchise, especially when it's like based off of something. That I would think it's around the same, just a different medium. But for this, it surprisingly is very different than Warhammer is in the 40,000 time frame. Because Warhammer now has a different vibe than it does in 30k. 30k is more Game of Thronesy, if I could say that. It feels more like there is bigger characters who are larger than life, who are conversating. There's friendships and dynamics that are very strong. And I think it is very weird and interesting how at this point the question is, will this continue or is this going to end in terms of the Imperium? Is it going to expand or is it going to remain stagnant? And that was more of a question instead of in 40k, where it is a clear decline. All 40k stories now are mostly the Imperium is dying, and everything we do is like, even if it's a step forward, there's like 3 steps back. People are dying, and any technological progress is completely stunted. So many missions that characters go on are proven to be fucking useless, and there's a sense of hopelessness that takes place in that time period. Whereas here, in the Horus Rising book, there is a level of hope that does exist. And I think overall, it's not necessarily a large amount of hope, but it is hope overall. And I think this is displayed very well within this. If you are to start reading Warhammer, and you start with the Horus Heresy, there is a different vibe, and I do appreciate that. But we should take a step back. In this step back, I want to talk about how did I get here? How did I find Warhammer? Why do I like it? And so forth. It'll be brief, I promise. The first time I heard about it was actually as a kid. My uncle and one of my friend's dads, big Warhammer guys. I never heard the name, I just saw the models. I know my friend's dad played the Salamanders, and my uncle, he played the Acadians. So I saw them building this stuff, I just didn't know what it was for, really. And the time I found out what it was through Cosmonaut Variety Hour. He did a video breaking down of Warhammer in a very simplistic term, entry-level point for people to get into the franchise. And this sparked a magnum opus in me. I was so fascinated with the world, and I moved forward to learn more about it. One of which was with the Astartes fan animation, which is incredible. It's incredible. It is better than most probably regular animation we get in certain high budget shows. It's insane, and it's made by one guy who now is hired by Warhammer. Season 2 on the way. Then I started playing Darktide, and then I watched Ricky's introduction videos, and then it was just waiting. It was waiting for Space Marine 2. Space Marine 2 came out. I did the grind. I did the grind for a while. I was obsessed with this game. I was obsessed. I was having so much fun. It was such a fun experience, and I'm so excited to go back and play it again. And I would say so far, there's a pretty decent selection of Warhammer games. And ever since then, I've now watched all the Warhammer shows on Warhammer Plus, and I have watched many fan animations, and I have enjoyed many different Warhammer edits, and I follow different artists who do Warhammer official and non-official art, and it just adds more into this idea that Warhammer not only is like a company, but also like it is a very community-held franchise. A lot of things that are used are fan animations. It's beautiful. It's great. And I enjoy it so much. And on the horizon, I think it's just going to get bigger. Realistically, we have Amazon's Henry Cavill show. We've got Space Marine 3 coming out. Next year, we have Astartes 2 coming out. We have nothing but things coming out for Warhammer.
Coming! Oh my god!
So that is my history on this, but I've always wanted to know more. So we are now starting with Horus Rising, written by Dan Abnett, and the tagline is "The seeds of heresy are sown." Our story takes place in the 31st millennia, where the Luna Wolves, who are led by Horus, go on a planet that is falsely named Terra. Very heretical, if you ask me, naming your planet after the Holy Terra. But the story is basically that this planet thinks that it's originally Terra, when in reality it's not, and they have a false emperor with a false golden throne. And the Luna Wolves go there, and they send one of their boys to be a diplomat. One of the head captains goes down to try to talk to the emperor, and things go south. War breaks out, and the idea is trying to get this planet into compliance. How do we make this planet understand that their emperor is false and that technically now we are in charge? The story goes into a lot of conversation on colonialism. Is what they're doing the right thing? The drama that kind of goes with it, the guilt that goes with it. There's a lot that they kind of play with in this kind of story, which I appreciated a lot. Our main character is Loken, who is recently just been promoted to captain and becomes one of the head leaders of the Mournival, which is a group of head captains who are basically the eyes and ears and the consultation to Horus, who has been granted War Master by the Emperor. And Loken himself is supposed to be inherently human, I think is the best way to describe him. He has questions. He has human friends. He acts very much how people would describe like a salamander. Like, he's sentimental, he cares, and he's questioning, but he is devoted, which I think is a very big part of his character. He is very devoted, and he is very loyal to the cause, but he does have morality questions. Is us, killing all these people necessarily the right thing? And it is interesting to see him kind of bounce these ideas off of different people. One being a mentor of his named Sidamund, who is kind of like this philosopher-style character. He teaches people about the greatness of the Imperium. And I like Sidamund. I like some of his speeches. They're kind of cool and kind of metal. And he overall, the dynamic between him and Loken is very strong. And then there are the Remembrances. The Remembrances are people who are photographers. poets, storytellers, artists, and stuff like that. They are the propagandists, but they see it for what it is. They take pictures, they write poems about what they saw, and they journal and they write. And some of these are actually some really good characters. I like Mercedy, I like Keeler, I like, I believe it's Caucasus is his name. It's kind of a funny name. He reminds me of Corcus from Berserk. Like when I heard the name and like the way he acts, it reminds me just of Corcus. Like when I imagine what he looks like, I'm like, I imagine that guy. Story goes from 6319 until they go to this place called the Whisperheads, which is a mountain that has some spooky secrets.
Hi? Man.
And the spooky secrets are, they kind of bring a lot of the beliefs that are taking place here under question, which is kind of interesting because in the 31st millennium, it doesn't seem like people know that the Chaos Gods exist. Like, they just don't. Like, they don't believe that gods exist. They don't believe demons exist or spirits exist, which is funny because if you're someone who's watched like the Bricky videos or has played the games and stuff, going back to a time where they didn't know any of this is very interesting because the gods are like it's like heresy to think there are chaos gods. And it's like interesting to see like Cinnamon and Horus being like, there are no gods, there are no demons, no spirits. We left religion behind. And then you just remember like, what about the old ones? What about the old ones? What about the Catan? What about the Eldar gods? What about the 4 chaos gods? What about the demons of the warp? Like, what do you mean? Like, they know, like, that the demons of the warp exist, but they kind of consider them more as Xenos or monsters, and not necessarily as entities that can possess you or that can sway you or anything like that. It's more like they've only seen them possess psychers who use the power of the warp, and it's more like monsters who just hijack them when they're doing like hyperspeed drives mostly. So when they deal with what happens in the Whisperheads, it's kind of a shock. And then the story moves into another planet where there are these giant spider monsters. These intelligent but savage spider monsters. In this part of the story, we are introduced to the Emperor's Children, who are these very pragmatic characters who are basically, they came here to help the Blood Angels, but they're doing this more to kind of prove that they are good and that they're sick at their job. But overall, they kind of are getting their asses kicked pretty bad. It's kind of embarrassing in certain parts. I'm like, oh no.
Stand back and peep the light show. Green Lantern's got it.
And then it moves into this final chapter. The final part is when we're introduced to this thing called the Interrex, which is a human society that's separated during the time of strife. And they have worked with like the Eldar, and they have found coexistence with different alien races. And they have a lot more knowledge about how the universe works than the Imperium does. And it kind of gets into some interesting territory that ends in a very kind of tragic way. The book kind of ends in a tragic note, and that's kind of the overview. And I think with this story, it does get into a lot of characters that I think if you're someone who's watched like the shows on Warhammer Plus, it's kind of funny because there are multiple characters in this who turn to chaos, and their current state, and you're like, oh, this is what they were like before that. And for example, like Abaddon, as well as Lucius is also here. And there are also some Primarch, like cameos, kind of, I guess. There is Russell Dorn. There is, Sanguinius shows up. I love the way they do it. They introduce him like it's like an anime ending, like a new character's coming in, like how they kind of introduce like Endo from Windbreaker, where it's kind of like this dramatic ending to the chapter, like Sanguinius is here. Sanguinius is here. And it's just like, that is the ending of an anime episode. So that's the overview. And I think if you are a fan of Warhammer, check this out. I would recommend starting here. But if you don't know anything about Warhammer and you don't know what I'm talking about, definitely watch like Ricky's newest breakdown videos and stuff. That context is going to be extremely helpful. I'm talking extremely helpful. Like, even to watch like the shows and stuff, it's kind of essential. Like, I feel like if you don't know what's going on, you're just gonna be lost. And I think the zeitgeist of constant information is so helpful for this series. It's kind of ridiculous. But now we're gonna get into spoilers. So yeah, spoiler time now. The story starts with Loken and on 6319 and him joining the Mournival with Abaddon, Aximan, and Torgotten. And he's already questioning. He's already questioning what's going on. Caucasus he got jumped because he found like a church and he got drunk and he, started rambling on saying the Imperium wasn't going to survive. And then you have Loken at the same time questioning like, was it right for us to like change this civilization's way of life? Is it right for us to take their religion away? They were at peace. They were fine. And then we came in, just killed thousands of people and basically told him we're your new boss now. And I think this is also being like pushed a little bit more because he's being interviewed by Remembrance named Mercy, who is very human in the way of like she's empathetic and fascinated, and the dynamic between her and Loken is very warming in a way that is kind of opening him more up to his humanity in a way that I think is very engaging to see and is very fascinating. And I'm very curious to kind of see how that dynamic grows as the time goes on, because he's now developed like friends by this point. By the end of this book, he has like a group of friends and people that he goes to, which is very different from like the Space Marine games and stuff, and even like future like storylines like Pariah Nexus and Angels of Death, where the Space Marines are very huddled just to each other. It is interesting to see a Space Marine who is not only friends with just his brothers, but he is very close with regular people. And I think that plays a huge part into his character kind of having second thoughts about some of the missions. And mentioning before, we have other Space Marine characters. We have the other Mournival. We have other characters like Vipers. And then we have Jubal. Jubal is a Space Marine he wanted to be captain. And he was part of this thing called the Lodge, which is basically like a brotherhood of Space Marines who kind of just talk. Like, they just show up for 2 hours and do like a brotherly, like, they just talk about what's going on in a way that very much is like non-conforming to like their rank or anything. And I think that is something that, and it praises the Emperor in a way. It's kind of seen as like a religious cult, but they don't really act like a cult. It kind of just feels like a fraternity. But it is kind of built on the concept of the Emperor is God and we are God's boys and we are all gonna talk about our problems in this circle. And Jubal, being someone who already praises the Emperor as a god and has resentment in his heart for Loken for taking his spot as captain and being part of the Mournival, he is susceptible to chaos and he gets taken over by a demon of Nurgle in some way, or not possessed, but he transforms into something that is very dark-tide. And the battle is horrific. The transformation is quick and gross and mean, and it just was like a very horror-based buildup in a way that I thought was very interesting. The kind of like anticipation, but also the dread of knowing something like chaotic was going to come forward is very interesting, and I very much appreciated how they did it. It was very well done. And when the battle did take place, it was like the Space Marines have no idea what to do when another Space Marine goes nuts. Like, they just were not expecting another one of their own to at any point like go crazy. And then now that he has, they don't know what to do about it, which I think is just very interesting to see how like if one shoots and kills one, they just kind of all fumble. And it's very different for what it is now, where Space Marines kill each other all the time. They fight against each other. They infight and everything else. It's like once the Horus Heresy happens, like all those rules fall to the ground. After this incident, we get more insight to Horus himself. And Horus, as a character, is actually kind of interesting because he does remind me of, like, as most, you know, characters who fall, he is very similar in the way of, like, he's a character who is inherently seen as beautiful and strong and diplomatic and kind, soft of voice.
If you will not seize it, then I will.
You know, he's kind of seen as, like, an overall just incredible man. And overall, at first, I actually liked him a lot as a Primarch. He seems like he cares. He seems like he just has a lot of weight on his shoulders. He doesn't really raise his voice all that much. He likes people. He has friends and stuff. He seems so normal. And it is interesting, like, within 54 books, I'm now more kind of sad knowing, like, where this ends up and what happens to this man who could have been a very great leader. And yeah, it is kind of just interesting to see how he, like, is at this point. Russell Dorn, him being close friends with Horus is interesting because their factions don't like each other, but they do. And then you have, of course, after 6319, after the attack of Nurgle's forces, everyone's in disarray. People don't know what they saw. The people who did see it, at least, they're all traumatized, and they're trying to explain it to themselves. And they're taking the explanation of, well, the warp just did something to them, and that's it. There is no other explanation. It's just the warp did something to him. I don't know what it was. And I think it is kind of interesting from the perspective of someone who knows. It's just like, y'all don't know what the fuck's going on. And you just know that this is gonna hit the fan eventually. And then they go to a jungle planet, trying to help out the Emperor's children, who went originally to help out the Blood Angels. And the Emperor's children are getting their ass kicked. Lucius is on the ground with, I think his name is Tarvitz, and I like Tarvitz. I also like Bull. We love Bull. Bull is great. He's a real one. Lucius is kind of a dick. I know he's like, I've seen like the episode with him in Hammer and Bolter, and honestly, looking at this guy in this, I'm like, yeah, I can see him being like this before. He's just an ass. Like, he's just an asshole. And I'm like, and for a guy who's like the best swordsman or whatever, man loves getting his ass kicked. And like, if anyone like does anything that doesn't involve a sword, he doesn't know what to do. Like, it seems like. But the battle is kind of crazy with a species that at first I thought they were Tyranids, but no, there's these things called mega arachnids. Mega arachnids are like these 8-foot tall spiders that use their front 4 arms as swords, and they are just these hyper aggressive but also kind of organized beings who just reside on this planet. And the Space Marines were like, we gotta put them under compliance. And I'm like, they're like animals. What do you mean compliance? There's nothing you can do with these things. You just gotta get the fuck out of there. They use their webs on these trees to cause like storms so that there would be no like communication or backup. Like, they're intelligent, but they're also like savage in a lot of ways. It's just a very aggressive and terrifying threat that takes place. And then eventually the Lunar Wolves show up and they help out, and you can tell there's some squabbles between the two factions, of course, because, you know, Emperor's children are pragmatic assholes. And the story then eventually Sanguinius shows up. And this is the first time I'm actually reading about Sanguinius. And I like him. I like him a lot. He's great. He's, I know he's glazed a lot. And it's because there's just so much of like, he has the best artwork, realistically. He has an insane artwork. He also has an amazing speech that's even just on YouTube. I'm like, just the speech at the Eternity Gate is crazy. And there's an animation that is a fan made of Sanguinius Vs Angron when he becomes a Demon Primarch, and that fight is just great. It's a great animation. Every part gets better in quality. I love it. Love it so much. But now seeing him at this point and knowing his fate of how this ends, it's very sad because Horus and him were actually really close and they have a great dynamic with each other. And it does just seem sad knowing how this eventually devolves. And then they do a 6-month campaign. This 6-month campaign against the Mega Arachnids until eventually a ship shows up and it's human. And it is the civilization known as the Interrex, where they are these hyper advanced humans. They've moved past English. They kind of have like a more advanced way of talking, I guess. And basically the next few months is just a lot of diplomatic stuff. It's mostly trying to see if we can get this group to comply or, you know, to be a part of the Imperium in some way. But a lot of members are not happy because, like, Abaddon, for example, he's like, these people, they work with Xenos and we don't fuck with Xenos. And that's like a big point of contention. And this is when Erebus shows up, who is, I believe, second in command of Lorgar, who is one of the Primarchs. And Erebus needs help. He needs help for his Primarch. And he knows that the Lunar Wolves and the War Master are very busy. So he's kind of just there to counsel, but he's kind of a shyster. He's kind of just a really sneaky son of a bitch who is there kind of to exact his own opinions. And it kind of causes a lot of chaos later on. And eventually it does end with negotiations fall apart. But only after Loken talks to one of the guards, who the guard explains, like, you don't know what chaos is. That there are actual demonic and sorcerer style like threats in the galaxy. And the guard was like, oh my god, they're oblivious to it. That means they're not servants of chaos, which means we can move forward with negotiations. But right then, right at that moment, their weapons stash is burnt down. And they assume it is the Imperium's doing, and an entire battle breaks out. Negotiations, tits up, it's over, it's done. And war has now started. And Horus is fucking pissed. He just spent, I believe it was like 8 months just negotiating and trying to move forward with these people just for it to fall apart through a misunderstanding. And he doesn't know who to blame. He doesn't know what to do. And he's now just angry. And you find out at the end, it was Erebus' fault. Erebus stole one of their weapons that was cursed, and he's the one who burnt the place down, causing the rift in the first place. The book also ends with the Luna Wolves getting a new name, the Sons of Horus. So the faction has a completely new name, which I think is a good idea because it is crazy to have the Luna Wolves and the Space Wolves being two wolf factions. So the Sons of Horus is now their new name. The book itself is actually really well paced, and I think a lot of it is done in a way that is very interesting. And the story does set up so much for the future. And I think realistically, when it comes to this story, it's a great entry point. And I think it's done very well. I think Dan Abnett did a really good job writing it. And I think also this book is pretty short, like considering. Like, it's only, like, let me check right now. 412 pages. Like, you know, like, I had also, like, well, I bought the book itself, so I can read it at home. But I did also listen to it in the car on Audible, and the voice acting is pretty good. I like the person reading it. I like the music when they do like a new section, and it's very just like atmospheric. It does a good job of you getting into the mindset of the book as well. And I think it's just done really well. I really liked it. And also one thing is when it comes to Warhammer in the like 40k timeline, there is something that is interesting that is done where I've always maintained the position that in a Warhammer, there is two perspectives in the Imperium. There's one, which is the realist, where everything sucks. If you're a guardsman, if you're a part of the Inquisition, if you're part of anything, you understand all is lost and all is fucked in some capacity, that this war is going to be detrimental in some way. And then, if you're a space marine, there's a level of optimism where if your brothers fight hard enough, you can accomplish anything. If you try hard enough, you can win. And they genuinely believe they can always win. And this is kind of shown with like Angels of Death and Pariah Nexus and the Space Marine games. And if you're anybody else, then there's a level of lack of hope. Whereas here, hope still exists for a lot of people. And one thing I like about Loken is that he has friendships and dynamics and a level of warmth that Space Marines do not show in a lot of the other forms of media. I don't know in like their 40k books, but in terms of Space Marine, like the game and stuff like that, they don't show this level of warmth. Like there's a part where Keeler is, she has like PTSD from what happened in the mountains. And Loken, to comfort her on his way out of the room after having an entire conversation about it, trying to put her mind at ease, kisses her on the forehead. And it took me back because I'm like, that's a level of comfort and warmth that I never would expect from a Space Marine, like ever. Like, I've seen, like, them being like, oh, I care about civilians or whatever, and, like, them talking to them. But actually, like, doing something like that, or having a human, like, touch their, like, a Space Marine's arm and kind of, like, to comfort them and be like, I'm here for you. I just didn't expect that. Like, they just don't play into that enough, I think, in the other forms of media. I don't know if that just ultimately all of it goes away, but I think in this, it does show a completely different side of the Space Marines in a lot of ways. How they desire brotherhood within the lodges, like this fraternity and whatever. And I can see why people who are hardcore fans of Warhammer love it so much, because these layers are underneath the badass Space Marine kind of like armor that it kind of has. Like there is real meat and connection and friendship and dynamics that do exist within the stories that are just not shown, which makes me understand like when people were criticizing Space Marine 2 for its story. I thought all Warhammer was kind of going to be like that, where it's like, it's just a mission with a little bit of drama and that was it. And then as I got more into it, into like Angels of Death and now this, I'm like, I understand why people were critical of it, because it's like, there are really complex characters and well-written characters and lovable characters that exist in the Warhammer license that I'm surprised they didn't think we need to try a little bit harder to make the story a bit more, I don't know, meatful, I guess, like more full. So yeah, that's my thoughts on this book specifically. I really enjoyed it. I think the next one I'm going to do is I'm probably going to do book 2 and 3 together, because finishing these is like very fucking quick. And the next 2 is False Gods and Galaxy in Flames, I believe. So yeah, I'm very curious to see how do we get to the, you know, actual heresy part, because so far Horus seems really good and Chaos hasn't fully shown themselves yet. Like there's still no sign of Khorne, Slaanesh, Nurgle, or Tzeentch, but there is still Chaos demons that do exist. But I am curious to see where this story moves forward. I'm going to talk about a little bit about this Origins of Evil story or series that I'm trying to do. In this, we're going to go through a lot of franchises. The idea is basically dissecting what evil looks like through mostly the big 3: demons, vampires, Nazis. The 3 most consecutive things that are the signs of evil. I think those franchises is kind of going to be the main ones we're going to do like things around. Some of the ones I have on my list are Berserk, Tokyo Ghoul, Warhammer, Doom / Wolfenstein. We have, of course, Black Lagoon, Death Note, Resident Evil, I definitely want to do. First Berserker, Kazan, and then Elden Ring, and Song of Ice and Fire. I do want to go through that as well, because I do really like House of the Dragon, and I want to know more about the world from the book's perspective and the show's perspective, and just see where this goes. Because so far, I do appreciate and I do like a lot of what's going on in that world. Again, I didn't see the ending of Game of Thrones. I will later. but not after until I read everything else. So maybe I'll have a different perspective. Who knows? But yeah, I'm going to start setting up my socials on other stuff like Twitter, Blue Sky, TikTok, and stuff like that. I also do like regular edits of like just music edits and stuff like that. And one thing I will say is if you're going to enjoy this, get a physical copy. And I'm a big believer in physical copies. I do this for all my comics and stuff like that. Go to your local Warhammer store. Go to your local, like, just local library and stuff and see if they have this. Or local game store even. I would love to see more of a spread of physical media. And yeah, so throughout this whole series, the goal is to get physical media for all of these and show you at the end what the collection ends up looking like. And overall, all the artists and clips and things will be tagged not only in the video but also in the description, and I will definitely be doing Horus Heresy edits and supplementary videos in the future. Okay, all right, everybody, have a good one.